All right, Fred, start with the motivation. Why? Why? That's my question. That's all there is to it. Why would John Bolton do this?
Liz, I'm just terribly disappointed with John. A national security advisor should never be revealing these confidential discussions he had with the president to formulate policy. Like one of these accusations was that the president didn't know Finland is an independent country. I don't believe that. But, he didn't have a lot of national security experience. I'm sure the president made mistakes behind closed doors. And those are the personal details, the private details that should never be revealed. And I'm very disappointed in Ambassador Bolton for doing this because of the precedent this sets. We want the president to consult with the best possible advisors and not to hold back when he asks what he might think are dumb questions to get our national security right. If he can't talk to the best advisors, our country's in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. And you've said this all along from the time that John Bolton was making accusations during the Democrats' Ukraine impeachment shenanigans. But John Bolton is a wealthy man. He doesn't need the money from this book. So he can't be solely motivated by just wanting to make a buck off of selling copies of his book here. You don't make accusations about the sitting president of the United States asking not only a foreign country, but an adversary like China for help to meddle in the 2020 presidential election unless you want that president to lose the election. Does John Bolton want the president to lose?
I don't know why he wrote the book, Liz. I hope you have a chance to ask him. But you're right. This book seems to be intended to defeat President Trump in the election. I can't understand why Bolton would want to do that because he was so strongly for Trump in the 2016 election. And look, I'm friends with Mike Pompeo, too. And Pompeo and Bolton both came into the government. They knew what they were getting themselves into. They knew Trump's an unconventional president, didn't have a lot of foreign policy experience. He was a deal maker. He had views that they didn't agree with on the Iraq war. But Pompeo found a way to work with him and to get his policies implemented. And like McMaster and Tillerson and Mattis, John Bolton could not figure out a way on how to work with this president and to get his policies implemented. I think that's the real story here.
Could that possibly be part of the motivation that John Bolton's life work came to a culmination in the Trump administration? This was his last great chance to apply his foreign policy philosophy. And when President Trump differed from him, he realized that he was never going to be able to implement it, and therefore it became personal?
Well, I think you're going to have to ask Bolton about that. But can I talk about what Bolton called the turning point for him with Trump?
Please.
He says in the book, the turning point for him was when Trump last June decided not to bomb Iran. You may remember the Iranians shot down a drone, and Trump's whole national security team had a series of attacks planned that would have killed 100 to 200 Iranians. And Trump said at the last minute, no, it's disproportionate to kill so many people because they shot down what was basically a flying robot. Now, Bolton says everything Trump did was to get votes or to promote himself. This didn't get him votes. This was based on Trump's principle that he wants to keep the U.S. out of unnecessary wars and not to use military force that could start a war. He was absolutely right. And Bolton said about that was the most irrational thing I ever witnessed any president do. I mean, Liz, think about that. And that was the turning point. That turned John Bolton against President Trump. That's something also the media needs to look into.
Well, that kind of corroborates my theory that he realized his foreign policy was not going to be implemented, and therefore he turned against the president almost in a personal vendetta sense, in a bitter sense.